Hi guys, this is editorial analysis for 5th January 2017. Today, lots of editorials were important and I just couldn't leave them because they were so important from the point of view of mains, and it took me a lot of time to make notes out of them. So, it's going to be a long day, and I have divided the videos in two parts. So, we'll be doing the editorials for today in part 1 and part 2. Let's start this one. The first one is from the Hindu newspaper. It says that on December the 30th, China has vetoed India's proposal to block the Jaish-e-Mohammed chief Masood Azhar at the United Nations. Other arenas of tension between India and China are: number 1, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor; number 2, India's invitation to Uyghur, Falun Gong and Tibetan activists; thirdly, expulsion of Chinese journalists from Mumbai; fourthly, China blocking India's membership to Nuclear Suppliers Group; fifthly, tensions over the South China Sea; sixthly, in the past, China has blocked India's proposal at the United Nations to designate Hizbul Mujahideen chief Syed Salahuddin and Abdul Rahman Makki and Azam Chima of Lashkar-e-Taiba as terrorists, and it also blocked questions on how designated terrorists Hafiz Saeed and Zakiur Rahman Lakhvi accessed funds in Pakistan despite UN sanctions. It's a shame that China has blocked Masood Azhar's addition to the list because he was seen live on TV being exchanged for hostages of the IC-814, that in our Indian Airlines aircraft that got hijacked. He openly spoke of meeting Osama bin Laden. He traveled to Somalia to recruit for Al Qaeda, and he professed loyalty to the Taliban chief Mullah Omar. So, despite all these evidences that are out there in public eye, despite all that, China has vetoed our proposal just because of animosity towards us. It's blocking the way for the international community to come together and act on terrorism. So that's our first editorial. Let's move on to the second editorial. This is from the Indian Express. It just talks about some aspects of Indo-Bangladesh relations. We'll discuss this article in 6 points. First one, the author says that seldom has a country contributed more towards the liberation of another country as India has for Bangladesh, including the sacrifice of nearly 2,000 Indian soldiers, shelter to millions of refugees, and during the Bangladesh Liberation War, Indians suffered economic hardships. So, seldom has a country done this much for another country. Secondly, however, there are some problems that we are facing bilaterally. For example, on both the sides, river transit is being handled by one ministry, railway by another, and road by yet another, with the attending interministerial mismatch and bureaucratic delays that comes with so many ministries handling and duplicating the work on both the sides. We could have moved much far ahead if all our transit potentials were brought under one master plan with one vision and clear goals of improving trade, commerce, and connectivity in sub-regional, regional, trans-Asian, and transcontinental aspects. Thirdly, we have not been able to work out a water sharing arrangement due to disagreements between centre and the state in India. That is, disagreements between the central government and the state of West Bengal. Fourthly, the Rampal power plant near Sundarbans is an ecological concern in Bangladesh. Fifthly, Bangladesh, they cleaned up terrorist camps on their side of the border, and we gave them duty-free access to our markets. So this has been sort of a positive move from both the sides. And lastly, our Farakka barrage destroyed the ecosystem of northwest Bangladesh, destroying thousands of acres of arable land, resulting in the rise of salinity in the river and underground water. After the 1996 river sharing arrangement between India and Bangladesh, some of the negative impact of this the negative impact created by Farakka barrage in Bangladesh has been mitigated to some extent. Let's move on to the third editorial. This is from the Indian Express. Very important editorial. Very important editorial. You know why? Because especially because in the recent times I've read so much on the criminal tribes, the so-called criminal tribes and denotified tribes, that there is a huge possibility that it could be a question in next year optional anthropology and sociology. Secondly, we have been seeing questions on tribes in mains general studies paper, also in paper 1. So I think this year we saw what are the constitutional provisions for for the scheduled tribes in India. So from that perspective, this becomes very important. It's on the Criminal Tribes Act. Anthropology optional paper has seen several questions on this, and since this is so much in news, I thought that we should do it rather well, because there are chances of questions coming from this. So we'll discuss this editorial in 7 points. Let's start. The first point, quotes from the Criminal Tribes Act 1871. It was passed by the British in 1871. The quote says that if the local government has reasons to believe that any tribe, gang or class of persons is addicted to the systematic commission of non-bailable offences, it may report the case to the Governor General in Council and may request his permission to declare such tribe, gang or class to be a criminal tribe. So that was a quote from the Criminal Tribes Act 1871. In the next point, we'll again do a quote from the Consolidated Criminal Tribes Act 1924. So another one was passed in 1924, and the quote says, the local government may establish industrial, agricultural or reformatory schools for children and may order for them to be separated and removed from their parents or guardians and to be placed in any such school or schools the children of members of any criminal tribe or part of a criminal tribe in respect of which a notification has been issued. So that quote is from the Consolidated Criminal Tribes Act 1924. The third point says that the Iyengar Committee of 1949-50, the Iyengar Committee lists 116 criminal tribes in the British territories and more than 200 in princely states. The Iyengar Committee recommended to repeal the Criminal Tribes Act in the year 1952. The fourth point is that the Iyengar Committee recommended that the Consolidated Criminal Tribes Act 1924 be replaced by a central legislation applicable to all the habitual offenders, but without any distinction based on caste, creed, birth, etc. Thus, the provisions of this proposed central legislation would be similar as CTA, Criminal Tribes Act, but the identification of the offender would shift to the individual rather than the collective category. The fifth point is that in the year 2007, the UN Committee on Elimination of Racial Discrimination said that the denotified and the nomadic tribes continue to be stigmatized under the Habitual Offenders Act, and it recommended to repeal the Habitual Offenders Act and rehabilitate the denotified and nomadic tribes concerned. Sixthly, after independence, most of these denotified and semi-nomadic tribes got classified as SC, ST, OBC. Some of these are still not classified anywhere and are still to access socio-economic benefits. And lastly, they are identified by many names in different states. For example, EBC in Bihar, original settlers in Arunachal, primitive tribes in Jharkhand and Odisha, most backward classes in Tamil Nadu, backward classes in Puducherry, Puducherry, etc. So there are lots of identification and there's a lot of confusion, so we need to deal with that also. So these are the problems that these tribes are facing.